this comes from Psalm 18, verses 1 through 6. It's the Eternal One's servant who addressed these words to the Eternal after he had rescued him from Saul and his other enemies. I love you, Eternal One, source of my power. The Eternal is my rock, my fortress, and my salvation. He is my true God, the stronghold in which I hide, my strong shield, the horn that calls forth help, and my tall walled tower. I call out to the Eternal, who is worthy to be praised. That's how I will be rescued from my enemies. The bonds of death encircled me. The currents of destruction tugged at me. The sorrows of the grave wrapped around me. The traps of death lay in wait for me. In my time of need, I called to the Eternal. I begged my true God for help. He heard my voice echo up to his temple, and my cry came to his ears.
Salmos, capítulo 18, 1 al 6. Un canto de victoria del maestro de coro de David, el servidor del Señor, que entonó este canto cuando el Señor lo libró de caer en manos de Saúl y de todos sus enemigos. Él dijo: Tú, Señor, eres mi fuerza, yo te amo. Tú eres mi protector, mi lugar de refugio, mi libertador, mi Dios, la roca que me protege, mi escudo, el poder de mi salva, mi más alto escondite. Tú, Señor, eres digno de alabanza. Cuando te llamo, me salvas de mis enemigos. La muerte me enredó en sus lazos. Sentí miedo ante el torrente destructor. La muerte me envolvió en sus lazos. Me encontré en trampas mortales. En mi angustia llamé al Señor. Pedí ayuda a mi Dios y Él me escuchó desde su templo. Mis gritos llegaron a sus oídos.
June 14th, 2016, 10:17 p.m. Today I returned to work for the first time since the Pulse tragedy, and something was different with me. This morning I noticed myself start to withdraw from the members with whom I've become so close. These same members are the people who I've been with since moving here 6 months ago. The same community of Muslim people that I've celebrated and welcomed now create pause and turmoil inside of me. Today I noticed an uneasy feeling when I saw someone with a beard or head covering. By afternoon, I couldn't leave my office without shaking in fear, afraid of the world, afraid of being gay in public, afraid of living and working, or simply afraid of breathing. This is trauma that I am not prepared for. But then, without words or explanation, my new friend Muhammad came into my office, threw his arms around me, prayed in a language that I do not speak. Through both of our tears, I realized that we both share the same emotions. We both share this beautiful city that is devastated. We are both afraid and unsure of the future. We are both human. We are both parts of the divine.
Amen.
This journal entry is one of the most embarrassing and yet life-changing moments I've witnessed and felt this far. I'll never forget the shame I felt that fear was my first gut reaction. I'll never forget the fellowship of tears that I shared with my new friend, weeping for a devastated city, crying for lives and security lost. And on my part, crying somewhat in shame and guilt of my first reactions. I share this story with you today to make the very real point that hate lives in our fears.
That's right. That's right.
Hate uses our fears as the currency for its back alley dealings and tradings in the stock markets of our emotions. Hate uses our insecurities like mortar to seal together the bricks and walls that we put up between those with whom we differ.
Right. Excellent.
Hate will invite us to a table and then pull out the chair when we go to sit down.
That's right. That's right.
1 year ago, hate tried early in the morning to make us a community of fear.
That's right. That's right.
Hate attacked in the very places that we as LGBTQIA plus people have used as sanctuaries for centuries.
That's right. That's right.
The first places that we can go and be gay in public, to hold hands or kiss or just be. Hate tried to convince us that it is normal to grow up dodging glances and dirty stares and dirty words, and then as adults have to dodge literal bullets. Hate tried to teach us that it is okay for 18 people to have to hide for their lives in one bathroom stall. Hate tried to drive a wedge in our community. Hate tried to inflate our lungs with the breath of more hate.
That's right.
And fear. In our song, we read that God is our eternal rock, fortress, salvation, our true God, the stronghold in which we hide. Today, I argue to you that fear is not necessarily a bad emotion. It is a natural reaction. It is something that we are born with. It is self-preserving, but we have to know where to hide.
That's right. That's right.
Do not let hatred drive you into hiding in the wrong places. Hide behind the shield of a God that loves you. A God that will comfort and repair your battle wounds like the kiss of a mother on her son's scraped knee. A God that collects and counts every single one of your tears and then uses them as the water to turn the windmill of change.
Amen. Amen.
May we recognize our fear and understand when we are in a need of place of hiding. May we know and feel the comfort offered to us by the eternal. And may we rest atop the tower raised to us above all of this mess. But we must not remain there. We cannot get comfortable hiding. Do not let hate send you to the wrong places to hide. We cannot hide in our offices all day. We can go into hiding with our beloveds, with our God, to be recharged, to be refueled. But then we must return. We must return because hate will continue to try. It will continue to creep into the peripheral and try to drive wedges in the places that we are trying to repair. But let us retreat when needed and then return once refueled. Because as hate continues to try, even through our fear, may we always continue to try harder. Amen.
Look what God can do. Amen.
Oh my God.
Hear these words from David again in Psalm 27. The Eternal is my light amidst my darkness and my rescue in times of trouble. So whom shall I fear? He surrounds me with a fortress of protection, so nothing should cause me alarm. When my enemies advanced to devour me alive, they tripped and fell flat on their faces into the soil. When the armies of the enemy surround me, I will not be afraid. When death calls for me in the midst of war, my soul is confident and unmoved. I am pleading with the Eternal for this one thing, my soul's desire, to live with him all of my days in the shadow of his temple, to behold his beauty and ponder his ways in the company of his people.
Yes.
His house is my shelter
Yes.
and secret retreat. It is there I find peace in the midst of storm and turmoil. Safety sits with me in the hiding place of God. He will set me on a high rock, high above the fray.
Amen.
God lifts me high above those with thoughts of death and deceit that call for my life. I will enter his presence, offering sacrifices and praise. In his house, I am overcome with a joy as I sing, yes, and play music for the Eternal alone.
Yes, God.
Salmo 27, 1 al 6, el Señor es mi luz y mi salvación. El Señor es mi luz y mi salvación. ¿De quién podré tener miedo? El Señor defiende mi vida. ¿A quién habré de temer? Los malvados, mis enemigos, se juntan para atacarme y destruirme, pero ellos son los que tropiezan y caen. Aunque un ejército me rodee, mi corazón no tendrá miedo. Aunque se preparan para atacarme, yo permaneceré tranquilo. Solo una cosa he pedido al Señor, solo una cosa deseo, estar en el templo del Señor todos los días de mi vida, para adorarlo en su templo y contemplar su hermosura. Cuando lleguen los días malos, el Señor me dará abrigo en su templo. Bajo su sombra me protegerá. Me pondré a salvo sobre una roca. Entonces podré levantar la cabeza por encima de mis enemigos. Entonces podré ofrecer sacrificios en el templo y gritar de alegría y cantar himnos al Señor. La palabra de Dios para el pueblo de Dios.
Alabamos, Señor.
The Eternal. The Eternal is my light amidst my darkness. The Eternal, an eternal God that has no beginning, a God that has no end.
Amen.
The eternal God. This God is my light and my salvation. I shall not be afraid. What a beautiful ability that we have as believers to live our lives in the light of the eternal. To live our lives even in the midst of darkness in the face of God's eternal light. My father used to tell me when I was a young boy, las fuerzas de una vasta oscuridad no pueden soportar la simple luz de Dios. La luz conquista la oscuridad. The forces of a vast darkness cannot support the simple light of God, for light conquers darkness.
Amen. Amen.
Light conquers darkness. What a beautiful concept. That no matter how strong and how powerful and how deep and how penetrating darkness may be, a simple light, the smallest light in the midst of darkness, will overcome that darkness and create life. That was the simple message that my father would share with us around the dining room table. A simple message that light will always overcome darkness. And here I am, many years later, experiencing a sense of darkness that descended upon our community a year ago. Encountering a dark, penetrating darkness that walked into a nightclub and killed and destroyed the lives of 49 innocent individuals. On that night, I believe on that night, on June 12th, in Latin night, I believe that the satanic forces of hell unleashed themselves upon a group of innocent people who were caught in the midst of this battle of darkness. In other words, my grassroots biblical teaching shows me that them forces were satanic that descended and destroyed the lives of those young individuals. This week, I sat down with a group of Latino, Latina, and African American leaders in this city with the LGBT community. And what I heard was devastating and painful. What I heard was a lot of hurt. What I heard was a lot of pain. People not knowing how to come together. People not knowing how to strengthen each other. Saying we have to do something. We have to do something to our community because our community is hurting. Dr. Elliot Gregory from the CANTO School of Theology wrote a book called Cut Deep. And in this book, he illustrates that the new form of racism in this modern day and era, the new form of sanitized racism in our society, is simply to ignore those that are oppressed.
Okay.
It's simply to act like if they're not there and they don't exist. That's the new form of racism. And that morning, as we sat down and drank coffee, and me just becoming a new leader in this community, I sat down and looked at my colleagues, and what I saw was devastation, and what I saw was hurt. I saw people that are being ignored and not heard. I walked away from that meeting asking the Lord, Lord, what would you have us to do? God, what would you call us to do? And it was that morning when I was reflecting on that scripture, when I was reflecting on this word to share with you, that the Lord revealed to me that God is a God of light, that God is a God of light, that no matter how deep and how dark and how penetrating that darkness is, God will overcome the darkness with God's light. Amen. And it started to encourage me as I gathered together with some Latino and Latina sisters and brothers. And we started to pray. And it hit me. And it hit my heart deep that in the midst of this tragedy, in the midst of this darkness, a new church is being born for MCC. And then in the midst of the ashes, Alabanza MCC is starting to gather itself and strengthen itself to proclaim God's love to a community that has been ostracized, a community that is rejected even by its own. You see, one of our Puerto Rican brothers laid in a morgue after Pulse. Day after day in the cold, he laid there because his Puerto Rican Pentecostal father would not claim his body. He lay there in the freezer because someone's religion prohibited him from loving him.
Right.
And it's in his honor that we will rise up and go to our people and say, that is a lie. God loves you and God is like And so this morning, in the midst of darkness, in the midst of that satanic darkness that descended upon our city a year ago, what we see is the Lord arising with God's light, descending upon us as a people, preparing us to bring God's light. So this is not a time to shrink away, but it's a time to draw near. This is not a time to give up, but it's a time to be encouraged. Let us go forward in the midst of this darkness, and let us rise up as a voice to proclaim the gospel in the light of Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Oh morning, Joy. For the last couple of weeks, you've heard some folks tell their stories about CLM, creating a life that matters, and how that has impacted their lives. Sherry spoke to us about rediscovering relationship with the divine, or God. And you heard Trista speak to us about rediscovering relationship with yourself. And this Sunday, I was supposed to talk to you about rediscovering relationship with your passion. I really wanted to tell you about that, so maybe Reverend Terri will let me do it at another time. But what I'm going to do today is I'm going to move ahead a little bit, and I'm going to try and explain, hopefully, how taking this course will prepare you for not only dealing with your daily life events, but for dealing with tragedies and other events just like what happened a year ago. So on June 12th, 2016, it was the worst mass shooting in history. In history. That's hard to wrap your head around. That day we lost 49 innocent individuals who went to a place, the Pulse nightclub, to just enjoy the company of other people like themselves, LGBTQ, Latinx, and other young people of color who only wanted to dance and have fun. They had no idea what was about to happen to them in a place where they felt safe, a place that felt like home to them. Nor did they ever imagine that what was to come would change not only an entire city, but the world. And let us not forget that there was another 60 or so individuals who were injured, not just physically, but emotionally, by an act of pure hatred that they'll have to try to live with and cope with for the rest of their lives as survivors. So how does CLM prepare us for times like what happened at Pulse? These 3 weekends pretty much, I hate to use the word force, but that's kind of what it is. It forces you to go deep inside yourself and explore just what each of those topics means to you. During these 3 weekends, you'll grow in your personal relationship with God. You'll discover that you're much stronger than you ever thought you were. And you will discover what weighs on your heart and how what you were passionate about could lead you down a path that you never thought possible, or that could perhaps one day help change the world. When you put all 3 of these weekends together, the one word that comes to mind for me is strength. As you go through these 3 weekends, you'll find you're becoming stronger. And this strength will be what drives you during these hard times. In the past year, we've been through a lot of changes in this town that all started on June 12th. We saw this city come together in love to donate blood for those who were injured. We saw a city come together to provide food, water, comfort, and more because human beings were hurt, and there was a need that had to be met. That day, there was no LGBTQ involved. There was just one human being helping another human being, and it was powerful to watch. We've also seen conversations, I should say, and dialogues emerge that will continue to open hearts and minds and allow our community to come to the table. And a lot of that is due to the passion and determination of our own 6'6" pastor, Reverend Terri Steed Pierce, who refuses to be silent.
That's right.
And who refuses to allow us to continue to be kept in the margins. And finally, we have parents who are opening conversations with their children about how important it is to respect and love each other, no matter what color of skin you have, where someone's from, or what their sexual orientation may be. An example of that is this poster over here to my left. It was created by the daughter of one of my friends who was just 9 years old. I knew she liked to draw, and I asked her if she would like to create a poster to honor the memory of the Pulse 49. And that was the only instruction that I gave her, was that the number 49 had to be in it. So what you see over there came out of the purest heart of a child. And it's actually a nightclub in heaven. There's a DJ, and there's angels, and there's 49 angels. And you'll see in the center center that there's a yellow like circle, and I didn't know what that was, but being the nice strict diabetic that I am, I immediately thought it was a Krispy Kreme donut. Angels gotta eat, right? I later found out it was a disco ball. And for those of you who are too young to know what a disco ball is, just Google it. And folks, these we know who eats at Krispy Kreme. And folks, all these things, this is why we give. We give so that programs like CLM and spiritual transformation and discipleship can continue to create leaders in this church who can set the stage for continued growth at Joy MCC and who are equipped to go out into the streets and create change. As you're preparing your offering, I ask you to consider how you can be a part of continuing the mission of Joy MCC, of taking the doors off the church and taking it to the streets. And as the ushers come forward, please pray with me. Father God, we come to you as believers in the hope that one day there will be a world with no hatred, that we can come to see each other as human beings with no emphasis on race, gender, or sexual orientation, a place where we can just be your children. I ask that you were with the families and other loved ones of the 49 lost at Pulse a year ago. Wrap your arms around them and give them strength and peace as they travel this first anniversary of the tragic loss of their family members and friends. Be with the survivors who are still struggling to cope and maybe questioning why they're still here and others are not. Thank you for this church and a pastor who loves you with all her heart and who continually teaches us to not be silent and to stand up for the marginalized, and who continues to preach and teach your word. Thank you for this offering today, and as always, guide us to use it for your honor and glory. And in the words of our pastor, we ask this in the mighty, matchless, marvelous name of Jesus. Amen.
Blessed always, blessed always, for the arms of God surround us. Let our joy be so triumphant that we rest in God and say amen. Blessed always, blessed always, for the arms of God surround us. Let our joy be so triumphant that we rest in God and say amen.
Hear now these words from Romans 8:28 through 39. We are confident that God is able to orchestrate everything to work towards something good and beautiful when we love Him and accept God's invitation to live according to God's plan. From the distant past, God's eternal love reached into the future. You see, God knew those who would be His one day, and He chose them beforehand to be conformed to the image of His Son, so that Jesus would be the firstborn of a new family of believers, all sisters and brothers. As for those God chose beforehand, He called them to a different destiny, so that they would experience what it means to be made right with God and to share in God's glory. So what should we say about all of this? If God is on our side, then tell me, whom should we fear? If he did not spare his own son, but handed him over on our account, then don't you think he will graciously give us all things with him? Can anyone be so bold as to level a charge against God's chosen? Especially since God's not guilty verdict is already declared. Who has the authority to condemn? Jesus, the anointed who died, but more importantly conquered death when he was raised to sit at the right hand of God, where he pleads on our behalf. So who can separate us? What can come between us and the love of God? Can troubles or hardships or persecution or hunger or poverty or danger or even death? The answer is absolutely nothing. As the psalm says, on your behalf, our lives are endangered constantly. We are like sheep awaiting slaughter. But no matter what comes, we will always taste victory through him who loved us. For I am convinced that nothing in life, nothing in death, no heavenly messengers, no dark spirits, the present, the future, spiritual powers, no height, nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord.
La obra salvadora de Dios. Sabemos que Dios dispone todas las cosas para el bien de quienes lo aman, a los cuales Él ha llamado de acuerdo con su propósito. A los que de antemano Dios había conocido, los destinó desde un principio a ser como su Hijo, para que su Hijo fuera el primero entre muchos hermanos. Y a los que Dios destinó desde un principio también los llamó, y a los que llamó los justificó, y a los que hizo justos les dio parte en su gloria. ¿Qué más podremos decir? Que si Dios está a favor, nadie podrá estar contra nosotros. Si Dios no nos negó ni a su propio Hijo, sino que lo entregó a la muerte por todos nosotros, ¿cómo no habrá de darnos también, junto con su Hijo, todas las cosas? ¿Quién podrá acusar a los que Dios ha escogido? Dios es quien los hace justos. ¿Quién podrá condenarlos? Cristo, Jesús es quien murió, todavía más quien resucitó y está a la derecha de Dios rogando por nosotros. ¿Quién nos podrá separar del amor de Cristo? ¿El sufrimiento o las dificultades o las persecuciones o el hambre o la falta de ropa o el peligro o la muerte violenta? Como dice la Escritura, por causa tuya estamos siempre expuestos a la muerte. Nos tratan como las ovejas llevados al matadero. Pero en todo esto salimos más que vencedores por medio de aquel que nos amó. Estoy convencido de que nada podrá separarnos del amor de Dios, ni la muerte, ni la vida, ni los ángeles, ni los poderes de fuerzas espirituales, ni lo presente, ni lo futuro, ni lo más alto, ni lo más profundo, ni ninguna otra de las cosas creadas por Dios. Nada podrá separarnos del amor de que Dios nos ha mostrado en Cristo Jesús, nuestro Señor. Amén.
Let the church say
Preach, preacher.
I am absolutely convinced that God has prepared Joy Metropolitan Community Church for such a time as what that little dude didn't know.
Right.
Well, he didn't know. He wasn't from here. He wasn't from here. He didn't know who he was picking on. He had no idea what kind of community he was coming into. This scripture today that was just read offers great hope against that kind of hatred in the world. The Apostle Paul reminds us here that there is nothing, no thing that can separate us from the love of God. Not death, not life, not angels, not rulers, not current things or future things, not powers, not things high and not things low. No thing can separate us from God's love. Not even hate and harm. Not even guns and grief. Not even homophobia or racism. Not self-loathing or self-rejection, all of which that young man was dealing with when he walked in to Pulse nightclub last year. No thing. The Apostle Paul then reminds us in 1 Corinthians 13 that love bears all things, not some things, all things. Hope believes all things. Love hopes all things. Love endures all things, not just some things. Love, Paul said, never fails. He said in the end of that chapter that faith, hope, and love remain, but the greatest of these, remember, is love. The Message version says we have these three things to do to lead us until God comes again: to trust steadily, to hope unswervingly, and to love extravagantly. Those are the three things Pulse has taught me. In the early morning hours of June the 12th, a man filled with hate walked into a neighborhood bar and began shooting. Having little respect for life, including his own, he began taking it as quickly as he could, and he did. Do you realize it took him a shorter amount of time to shoot 49 people than it did to ring 49 bells in honor of them just recently? It would be easy for us to be bitter. It would be even easier to remain hidden. And it might be wise for us not to gather in places like that again. But then we're trapped. We don't trust then that God can take an unspeakable horror and make from it incredible good. I believe that's just what God's done. This is how we might move forward from last year and not allow that hate to define us. By trusting in God and the goodness of humanity steadily, even when what we see doesn't look like it. By holding on to hope unswervingly, even when things are hopeless. From the ruins, God can build a mighty structure again. And then lastly, I believe we move on from this by loving extravagantly. Jesus taught us how to love extravagantly in his Sermon on the Mount. There he was turning tradition upside down. In his discourse over and over, he said, "You have heard it said, but I say to you." He began with how we handle anger, and then he moved to lust and divorce and vows and retaliation. And then Jesus ended on loving our enemies. Not our neighbors, but our enemies. This is hard. In Matthew 5:43, Jesus said, "You have heard it said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Saints, I believe this is the antidote to hate. Love, you see, is the way out of hate. Love is the only way out of hate. Jesus told us how to love our neighbors, to love them and love our enemies extravagantly. And then throughout his ministry, Jesus showed us how to do so. Jesus, you see, spent time with people that most people wouldn't want to. Jesus spent time with tax collectors like Matthew and Zacchaeus and allowed them into his circle of friends. When you looked at your circle of friends last, did it include those who most other people hated? Think about it. Jesus had a conversation with the Samaritan woman by a well in a place that Jewish people wouldn't even go. And he spoke to someone men were forbidden to speak to in public. When's the last time we spoke to someone we might be forbidden to speak in public? We gathered this week in a group of religious leaders all over from all kinds of faith traditions. And last year at that same place, we were not invited to the table. But this one doesn't know how to be quiet, and so we got invited to the table this year. And we sat around while we were waiting, and as we were going to go through the program and kind of just go through the logistics. When you get a bunch of preachers in a room, everybody's in charge, and nobody wants to do anything. And we sat and we tried to figure out what we were doing. And I was amazed that still, I sat around the table with what some may call some enemies. Some people from their pulpits who have preached against people like me and my kind, who sit with me today. Those who love me and love like me. And some of them still didn't speak. But Jesus encourages us to love extravagantly. And that means we walk across the table and we begin speaking even when they won't. Jesus even touched lepers and minstrel women, though society prohibited him from doing so because these type of people were deemed unclean. You ever been deemed unclean? Yes, you have. And then Jesus, in an ultimate act of love, sacrificed his life so that we might live and we might have life in abundance. Perhaps this is how we honor those fallen, by living and loving like Jesus did, creating a world where hate can't win and, more importantly, won't win in our presence. It can't win when we're around. We won't let it. Last week during the Faith in Public Life press conference, I urged our state to honor the memory of the fallen with holy action. And I believe there is no more holy action than loving extravagantly. Hate tries, saints, but love wins. Love always wins. And may it win in us every single time. May we be like Jesus. May we do that, and may we trust steadily in a God who works all things together for our good. May we continue to hope unswervingly that the world can be at a better place because we're in it. And may we love extravagantly everybody that comes through the door. We do this and hate won't win. Love will win in Jesus' name.